And a big guest joining us inside the Pirate Radio studios. Bryce Williams still alongside, and John David Baker, new offensive coordinator of your East Carolina Pirates, joining us as well for the first time. Coach, appreciate you hanging out with us for a little bit. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. Appreciate you having me.
Yes, sir. Bryce, when you walked in, Bryce said, so you got a little off time? And you said, nah, not really. Yeah. Is there any off time?
No, not really. I mean, especially with just going back and being able to coach in the bowl game. I mean, I left right after the bowl game and went back, saw family for a second, and then flew right back to Greenville and boots on the ground, keep working. So there's not a bunch of time off right now, which is fine.
I asked you during the press conference about being here and also coaching in that bowl game, and you had a great response. You said, I'm an East Carolina Pirate, but everybody in your room, you brought them there to Ole Miss, right? Yep. So you wanted to see them out in the best possible way, and you were able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a year ago right now, I was, in the middle of recruiting Caden Prescorn to come to Ole Miss, and when he made that commitment to us, I made the same to him that, you're coming here, I'm going to finish this thing with you. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm going to finish it with you. And so be able to go back and coach in the game, and obviously Caden have the game that he had and how the game went was pretty special.
What was it like to be thrown right into the recruiting fire? And I guess you get with Coach Houston, the other coaches, see, who's on their target board and immediately go out and start talking to these guys. So what was that situation like for you?
Yeah, it's just kind of crazy because a week before you're walking into a high school with one set of colors on, and then the next week you're in a different set of colors, but still trying to spin the same message of trying to get guys to come be a part of something special, obviously here, but also, something special playing in this offense. And that's been the biggest thing, talking to recruits, talking to kids and coaches, just their level of excitement, knowing and seeing what we've done the last 3 years there at Ole Miss, and knowing that a version of it's coming here. People have been, big time receptive to it.
As a former tight ends coach, got a former tight end here in the Pirate Radio studios, and Bryce, we want to talk about Shane Calhoun and all the young tight ends on this roster and see those guys get going. What is the role of a tight end in your offense, Coach?
I tell everybody, especially because I've coached it the last 3 years, in any offense, the quarterback is always the most important guy. I mean, it starts and ends with him. But in what we do, the tight end, he is ultra important to the success of the offense. If you look at just the last 3 years there, when we've had a tight end, we've been extremely, extremely good, like very diverse in what we do. Obviously, you saw the difference of when Prescorn was kind of injured our first 3 games this season, and then when he came back, we just kind of went to another level offensively. They're imperative of what we do just because of the tempo piece, and we ask them to do a lot of different things. They're kind of a Swiss Army knife for us. Like, we put them in a lot of different situations and ask them to do a lot of different things.
John David Baker here inside the Pirate Radio studios. Bryce, you got a question? You can jump in. Yep. Jamie has a question on YouTube, which is kind of ironic because recently you posted the Steve Logan "we go for it every time" clip. That always gets the fans fired up. He said, how often do you go for it on 4th down in a game? Now, obviously, this has to do with down and distance, or the distance, the time, and all that. But generally speaking, how aggressive will you be on 4th down?
Yeah, it just depends on the situation of the game, and we've been very aggressive here in the past, and that would be something that Coach Houston and I work through because it's it's a team thing, and it's not necessarily just an offensive perspective of what we're trying to do, but it's about situational football and when the time is to go and when it's not to go. And honestly, I saw that clip early on after I gotten hired, and I thought it was pretty awesome. So,
John David Baker joining us, offensive coordinator at East Carolina. We've talked to a commit and to a signee. I'm not sure if you can talk about Caden Hauser. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't know what you can and can't talk about. But as far as the quarterbacks you got here and the quarterbacks that are coming in, how do you feel about that position heading into this offseason?
I feel good. We got to continue to try and add competitive depth. That's the most important thing, and that's my job, is to make sure that from top to bottom that we've got guys in that room that I don't care if you're a 5th-year senior or you're a freshman stepping on campus. Your job is to come in there and compete and push the guy in front of you. And so I feel good about it. Is it where I want it to be yet? No. But I feel like we're heading in the right direction.
my last chat with Alex Flynn, he was still seemingly undecided on what he was going to do as far as football or go into the real world and that stuff. Do you know if Alex Flynn will be a part of the team?
That's just, he and I got to continue to have some more conversations about it. That's kind of been the hard thing about just the transition as far as, you get here and it's all about recruiting, where it's in today's college football world where you got to really you also got to recruit your own roster. Right. And that's where, unfortunately, at times that gets put on the back burner, and especially in my situation with obviously, trying to recruit new guys to come here, but also going back. And so those will be conversations that he and I have here in the near future, probably.
John David Baker joining us in the Pirate Radio studios. If you have a question, you can get it in. Tyler asking the biggest difference between ECU and Ole Miss.
That's probably hard to say. I just haven't had everybody wants to ask me, how's Greenville? I'm so, well, I've spent maybe about 72 total hours here, right. Unfortunately. Most of it's been spent out on the road, but just from the time that I have been able to spend here, the town is awesome. The people are awesome. It's exactly what you want in a football town, in a college town. Like, you can't ask for much more, honestly.
Kenny asking, will you be in the booth or on the sideline?
I've always planned on being in the booth, and I've been in the booth most of my career. Besides at Ole Miss, I've actually been down on the field, and so my plan right now is to go up top, but we'll see as time goes.
You talked about recruiting a lot here and being on the road. You've really got to at least enjoy that somewhat to be in this business. So how about making those personal relationships, being on the road? It's got to be tough, but also, what kind of satisfaction do you get from doing that and trying to bring in kids?
There's a couple of parts to that. Like, one, I enjoy it because, you're going to see different high school coaches, so you get to sit down and talk with them, and it's funny. Like, people say it's a small world. The coaching world is even smaller, and so when you start talking to these high school coaches, it'll take about 5 minutes. You're going to make a connection to somebody that that he knows that. We play together here, we coach together here. And then the other thing is, and why I love coaching and recruiting, is you get to see these kids and you get to see where they're from, and what kind of makes them who they are, where they grew up, the community they're a part of, the kids that they grew up with. And so that's the part that I enjoy the most. You get a real feel for where a kid's coming from.
Mm-hmm. Bryce, you got a question for Coach?
I was just kind of pondering some questions. As far, and obviously the tight end deal, has one already committed here? Did I see that y'all posted?
We've got a high school signing.
Yeah. Are y'all kind of on the looks for adding another tight end, one or two, or are you content with kind of where we're at? Or
I feel really good about our room right now,
yeah.
Especially with the signee coming in. I feel like we've got really good competitive depth in there. Really feel like those guys' skill set fits what we're going to do offensively, and I like I said, I feel really good about where we're at. I hope those guys watched the bowl game the other day because they saw the tight end, win the Peach Bowl MVP and what he did for. I think he had like 10 catches for 130 some odd yards. So
nice.
that was good probably for them to see just when the offense is rolling, that guy's a big part of it.
Yeah, which I actually like hearing that too. How much the tight end's going to be utilized in your offense. So I'm excited to hear that.
Bryce, you were what, top 10, definitely. Top 5 all-time tight end at ECU? Where are you at? Where do you rank yourself?
Statistically, I think touchdowns is. My dad could tell me. I don't really know. I think it's
you're up there.
Somewhere top 5 catches, yards, somewhere in the. I think top 5 is somewhere around there.
And we need to get back to that, utilizing that tight end.
Well, I said we weren't going to take another one, but when he stood up a second ago, I was trying to figure out if he had any more eligibility left. Like, I'd take you back.
Yeah, I could probably find some finagling in these rules in NCAA.
COVID you didn't use your COVID year because that was you were gone before that happened.
I would love to. I tell you,
they got a waiver for everything now. We can get you going.
Hey, that works for me. I'd come back to Greenville. Well, I'm here, but I'd come back to the Pirates in a heartbeat. That's for sure.
Luke's asking John David about your playing career. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I grew up in San Angelo, Texas. Played at a little 4A high school there. There's 2 high schools in town. I went to the smaller of the 2. Played was a 3-year starter in high school, and then had a chance to go play at Abilene Christian, which at the time was a Division II school when I signed there. And then my senior year, we transitioned to FCS. So I was a lifelong backup. I was a backup quarterback my first 3 years of college. Backed up who now is one of my best friends. His name's Mitchell Gell, he's for a long time he was Division II all-time leading passer, and then had a long career in the CFL. But had a chance to play my senior year. It was our first year transition to FCS, and had a ton of success in that 1 year and loved every second of it. And then when I got done playing in college, I wasn't real sure. I knew I wanted to coach, but I wasn't sure what kind of path I wanted to take. I thought I always wanted to coach high school football in Texas, and that was my plan. And so I had an extra semester, and I was student teaching at the time. And my college head coach was like, well, hey, why don't you just come out here and GA? So I was doing that, and then I got a phone call about playing in this indoor league, and I was like, shoot, I need some extra money, so why not? So kind of did that for a little bit, and then got into my coaching career right after that.
Yeah, good stuff. Talking to John David Baker, I got a text about you sounding like Lincoln Riley. I guess both Texas guys. And Robert asking, do you know Lincoln at all? Have you talked to him?
I've met Lincoln a couple times just because of just all my connections to the air raid through Graham, Harrell, and all that. But I don't know Lincoln personally. No.
Do you hear it? You hear it at all, Bryce? I mean, you were.
Oh yeah,
Lincoln,
between him, Garrett. Yeah.
You hear the Texas
which
draw.
Which is nice because with the Texas OCs, we've done really well.
That's right. You can't complain about that. Got Bryce Williams here, got John David Baker. And Bryce, usually at this time, every Tuesday, we're talking food. We just welcomed in Coach to those conversations during the break, talking some barbecue. In fact, we had a question earlier. Tyler asking, have you been introduced to Eastern North Carolina barbecue yet?
I have not yet, but it's like I told you a second ago off air, like I'm a fan of good food. So if it's good, I'll try it, and I'll go anywhere and eat it.
All right. Well, you got plenty of options around these parts. A lot of good barbecue around the area. If you got a question for Coach, you can get it in. He'll be hanging out another 10 or 15 with us here in the Pirate Radio studios. Ryan asking, do you believe you have the pieces here to run the type of offense you want? And if not, what is the biggest need that you still need to add?
No, I really feel strongly that we do, and I'm not just saying that. I really do. We sat down and watched really every guy that we've got on the roster and feel like we've got the pieces and feel like we've added the pieces that we really need to go do it. Now we've got to still add some depth and get some guys in some spot that you got to have to make it through a 12, 13 game season. But I really do feel like we've got the guys in the room that we can go be extremely competitive next year.
Coaches, make the players, but players can make coaches as well, right? So in 22, we had an explosive offense with some really good players that departed the program, and last year was a struggle offensively. So you said you've gone back and looked at some of that. Did you did see some positive signs though from what is on this roster?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we got players in that room, and like I said, we've added some guys to do that. But like you said, great players make great coaches, and it's our job to make sure we're doing things to put those guys in a position to be successful and asking them to do things that they're good at. We always talk about, not trying to put a square peg in a round hole. Like, let's make sure we're asking these guys to do the things that they can do well and do it at a high level.
Question here from Justin, and I'm going to change his question. His question is, what game on the schedule next year are you looking forward to? I'm going to ask you, do you even know who's on the schedule next year? Have you even sat down to look at that yet?
I've got a fairly decent idea what the schedule looks like. The only one that I really care about is that first one versus Norfolk State. And that will be, to me, that is the biggest game of the year, because it's going to be the first chance that we get to, as a unit, to go step on the field and go, put what we're about to do for the next 8-9 months and go put it on tape and put it on the grass.
I did see Liberty playing on New Year's Day. What was that, yesterday? losing to Oregon, and they are on the schedule. We get App State here, Bryce, which will be a good in-state opponent on the road at Old Dominion, and then you get in to conference play. This is more of a Blake Harrell question, but having Navy and Army on the schedule, that's going to be a headache for the defensive coaches. Anything change with the offense when you take on a military academy?
You just kind of know going into those games, like, there's a good chance you're going to have a few less possessions. Now, I say that, when I was at University of North Texas, we played Army in 2017 and ended up beating them 52-49. And so I say that, but sometimes when those triple options get rolling, it'll turn into a shootout real quick.
Brooks asking, what's more important in 2024, college football, NIL, or an indoor practice facility?
Well, that's a great question. To be honest with you, if you ask any one of those kids what they'd rather have, an indoor practice facility or NIL money, they'll tell you NIL.
Sure.
And so that to them is the most important thing. And anybody would tell you that, facilities are nice, but a kid is always going to prefer a few extra coins in his pocket over, going to practice indoors on certain days.
That goes for all of us breathing.
That's correct.
Out here in the world. Jamie asking, because Mike Houston has, you look at his track record, he has won quite a bit. Last year, that was not the case. Says, what sold you on Mike Houston? And kind of standing on shaky ground at the moment, but again, he's got a very good foundation. So what kind of sold you on Coach Houston?
A couple of things, really, and one I've spoke on before is just, once I got to know him as a person, it was a pretty easy sell, just knowing the type of man he is and kind of where he comes from, what he believes in. But the second thing is if you want to know what the future looks like, look at the past. And Coach Houston's had a bunch of success over his time. And to me, the most important thing for him when you look at that success is he's done it at all different levels, and maybe it's because I played D2 ball and coached FCS. Like I've got a respect for guys that are able to have success at those levels and been able to translate it. He's been able to translate it everywhere he's been. And last year it is what it is for whatever certain reasons, but him as a whole, and you look over his career, he's been extremely successful, and I don't see why that should change anytime soon.
Robert asking, are players able to learn your terminology and plays at this time? Do they have any playbooks or anything?
No, that's the kind of the crappy thing about just the way college football's set up right now is, we were actually talking about in the office earlier, we're about to have these few days of visits coming up. The kids start school next week on the 8th, and then we're on the road. And so I'm about to go, really our whole staff that we've gotten to maybe say hello to these guys, but right. We're about to have the first 2 or 3 weeks of school for the spring semester, and we're not even going to be able to be around our guys, which I hate. So, no, they haven't yet, but that's the beauty of what we do. I've got zero concern that they're going to be able to learn it and pick it up really, really fast.
Yeah, I think we talked about that, Bryce, when we made the change from Donnie Kirkpatrick, and we're looking for a new coach about, terminology, and Justin here's asking about up-tempo or huddle, and how easy was it for you to learn a new playbook, which you went from Riley to Dave Nichols, so how similar was it?
It was all the same.
It was all the same.
Which was nice. That offense was obviously a lot of hand signals. Literally one hand signal told everything. It was almost effortless, what we were going through. So obviously the big change was NFL when they're this long.
How about with you, Coach, as far as what the guys will need to learn? Yeah, I'm sure you try to keep it simple, right?
Yeah, that's the that's the air raid in me, but it's we've always just tried to keep it extremely simple for those guys, because if those guys are having to think. They're going to start playing slower, and that's not good for our success. And so that's something that we always err on the side of, is never having too much. But we're always going to be creative. We're always going to have ways to attack the defense. But it's my job as the coordinator, as a coach, to make sure those guys are not thinking at all, and they can just go play freely.
If it's going the way you want it to, will you go up tempo?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's just, like I've said before, that's something that I believe in, because I've seen it over my time the last few years. To me, it's for us at Ole Miss, it was an equalizer. For some of those defensive lines in that league, for a place like here where I feel like we're going to have equal talent to everybody that we're playing. Now it becomes a real advantage, and there's times where you really want to use it, but there's times where you got to be smart as well, and we'll have a healthy balance of that.
Talking about being pleased with the tight end room, another room you got to be pleased with is the running back room. And again, you haven't had a lot of time to get to know these guys because you've been out on the road so much. But that, even in a down year offensively, was a positive for ECU, and appears it'll be the same coming up this next season.
Right, absolutely. We've got great depth in that room, and we need it. If you look at the last few years. It's not just been one guy, especially if you look back at 2021, our first year at Ole Miss, we had 3 different guys rush for about 700 yards. And so that's kind of the balance we want in the room, especially with the tempo stuff. Like, it helps. We always want a fresh guy in there. And all it does is create opportunities for guys in that room. So, I promise you there's going to be a guy sitting in there when we start spring ball that's going to be about 5th or 6th on the depth chart. And all of a sudden you're going to look up in the season, he's going to be one of those main guys.
We got to get our final break in. We'll come back more with John David Baker. Kenny Curlings, this is the leading question. I know his favorite NFL team. He knows you're from Texas. He wants to know your favorite NFL team. Go ahead.
I was born and raised a Cowboys fan, my whole family. And you got to think, when I was growing up, the Cowboys were winning Super Bowls. So, I love Troy Aikman. I love Emmitt Smith. Had a pet named Emmitt growing up, so I'm a Cowboys guy.
Yeah, I'm a sad Washington fan, Coach, so I ain't got much to say to you right now. We need a new show with Bryce and Coach, just talking about signs and signals. And pretty fascinating conversation during the break there, and something I did want to bring from that break to the air. You talk about stealing signs a lot in baseball. Happens in football as well. Jim Harbaugh apparently brought it to the forefront, or Michigan anyway. But as far as that goes, Coach, and trying to maybe shield what you're doing, change up what you're doing, how much does sign stealing go on in football, and what do you do to combat it?
It goes on a lot. Those defensive guys, they always try and find an advantage. Offensive guys do too. But for us, obviously the thing that helps us is the tempo part. It's hard for guys to pick our signals because by the time they know what we're doing, the ball's probably getting snapped. The other thing is, we got multiple signal guys, so trying to figure out which one it is and all those things kind of help that.
I had a question from Seth. He said, if an ECU fan wants to watch a team from this past season to get a feel for what our offense will look like, is it safe to say Ole Miss is that team? And are there any other influences? If Pirate fans, look, we saw kind of a rough offense last year. We want to get excited about it. Watch Ole Miss. Any other teams we could watch to maybe get a feel for it?
Yeah, obviously our stuff there, it'll be very, very similar. Probably some of the other ones you can watch. Oklahoma would be a great one to watch with Coach Levy, who was the offense coordinator at Ole Miss. It's actually kind of how I got to Ole Miss. What they did at OU this year, and then watching Tennessee, just the tempo piece. There'll be there's a blend of what we do and what they do as well.
Kenny asking how excited you are to work with a talent like Caden Hauser and what he could bring to the quarterback position.
No, absolutely. He has a high ceiling. He has what I like to think kind of everything you want in a quarterback as far as arm talent, athletic ability. He is wired exactly how you want. He is a football junkie. And that was, as I went around and met with different guys and just kind of try to get a feel for him, it became apparent really fast that this kid was all about ball and he loves football. And I think once he stepped on campus, he felt, how serious this place was about ball. And he told Coach Houston, I want to be a part of this. And so that's, I'm excited as can be. I just can't wait to get his big butt here on campus and get to work.
Josh asking, are we getting speakers in the helmets like what's been in the bowl games? If so, has ECU been allowed to mess with those yet? Know anything about that?
That's a good question. They've tried a bunch of different things. Like they've done the headsets and the helmets. They've done the tablets in some of these bowl games. if they're testing that stuff out, I bet you it's not far away from being in college football all across the board. And so I think it's something that we'll see here in the near future.
All right, about out of time. Bryce, you got anything else? It sounds like you know what play he's calling and what you need to do as a tight end, right?
Yeah.
You understand it pretty well?
Hopefully I can come out to practice, maybe, if I can.
Yeah.
Maybe get some cleats, just to relive the old playbook days.
Run a route or two. Yeah. That'd be good. Coach, thanks so much for hanging out, man.
No, absolutely. I appreciate you guys.
Hopefully we gave you a break. Now you can get back to work.
Yeah. I got to go make some phone calls.
There you go.